Welcome everyone to Los Hijos del Rol, to this very special episode of StoryAlways, in which we are going to be interviewing Christopher Gray, the author of the Happiest Apocalypse on Earth, a game, a powered by the Apocalypse game that is being kickstarted right now, and in fact has already been funded, and is now aiming for stretch goals. So we already have a success in our hands. We are going to be discussing with him how his history with RPGs, RPG design, the design process of this game in particular, the campaign, and basically anything. Uh, so for those of you that are listening to us, I will repeat this a couple of times. But if you have any questions that you'd like to ask Christopher, please feel free to write it on the chat and try to ask them to Christopher. Um, so first of all, I want to thank you, Christopher, for being with us today, for coming today to this channel, and I congratulate you for the campaign, for the Kickstarter campaign that is doing so well.
Thank you for having me. And I think you're being a bit modest, Angel, because you've been around for the entire process. You came in early when it was a Patreon, so that's great. Thank you for supporting it all this time.
I mean, I saw like amusement park, like Disney World, horror, and I was like, I'm sold. I'm sold. Like, that's it.
Why hasn't this been done before?
Yeah, it's one of those things that, like, especially Powered by the Apocalypse games, just it's one of those games that had to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. This is great.
So usually the way we usually start, the way we're going to start is by inquiring you a little bit about your beginnings with RPGs. How did you get introduced to RPGs? How were your first experience with them? And what was that interested you back then?
Well, it's funny. I was talking to my wife about this because I knew I'd get this question during the process. And I don't really remember my first game. I'm not just blowing smoke. I really, and I tried. I don't remember. It's like I've only ever played games. I I must have started with AD&D Second Edition. There's a lot that I remember about that game, and I never ran it. I played it with must have been my middle school friends, but I don't really remember. Where it really took off was in the 90s. I got my hands on Rifts and Palladium Rifts, which is a terrible game. But
I wasn't going to say it. I wasn't going to say it. I have no opinion
it's
one way or the
terrible.
other.
It's fine. It's fine. I know it's terrible. I didn't know at the time, though, because, in 92 or 93 or whenever it was that my friends and I were playing, there weren't a lot of options. I mean, we'd go to the mall and there was the bookstore. There was Dungeons and Dragons and there was Rifts. And I didn't know really of any other games. I thought, like, the mech games were, indie, right? And I didn't know. So we played it for years. And what's worse was that I started taking the Palladium system and homebrewing it into another much worse system. And we used that for years. For throughout high school and college, and we played a lot of White Wolf when it came out. That was werewolf and vampire. We played a lot of that. We played anything that we could find, but we couldn't find a lot. I remember one time my friend came in with Tales from the Floating Vagabond, which, if you've never played this game, it's supposed to have gone to a second edition, although I don't know where that's at. But it's basically Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy meets Red Dwarf, and it's a wild romp. So we played weird things like that too. But most of the time we played a homebrew system that was a space opera of our own design, of my own design. And you could still find that after college, I ended up putting that on Wikia because I didn't know what else to do with it. And it was years. We're talking, it must have been 12 years of world building and development on the space opera. I just threw it up on Wikia, and it's still around. It's actually kind of running itself. I haven't touched it in a long, long time, which I feel guilty about. But if you ever want to check that out, early Christopher Gray, that's Basilicus, and it's still out. But anyway, we played that forever, and it was funny because a couple of years ago I was thinking about it, and I thought, you know what? Traveler was there the entire time. Traveler has been around since the 80s, and we were playing a space opera with really bad Palladium rules when Traveler was there the whole time. So I don't know. I have a weird sordid history with role playing games, but yeah, and that's where it all started. I've always designed games, sometimes better games than others. I remember in elementary school making board games off of my dad's file folders, and I would draw them. Draw like the path through and all of the obstacles with your piece, and you would roll the die. And I remember my dad one time saying, this is a really fun game, but you should have good things happen too. And because every square has something horrible that would happen to your piece. And anyway, first lesson in game design when I was 8.
Yeah, the carrot and the stick. The stick is important, but sometimes the carrot too.
Right. But yeah, it was. I've always been a gamer. I've always loved games. I fell out of tabletop for a while because it didn't have a group, and I ended up playing MMOs for a long time. And I was always on the role playing servers, and I was always trying to make it tabletop-ish. And I kind of got sick of it after a while because the idea of role playing on MMOs is that you go to the bar, and you talk in funny accents, and I don't know. There was no story, ever. It's just people one-upping each other. But anyway, I played EverQuest 2, Warcraft for a while. I played, oh boy, the list goes on and on. Lord of the Rings Online, I played for a long time. And then finally I realized that there was this thing called the internet. And on the internet, you could find people that also played tabletop role-playing games. And so when Roll20 came out, that's when I jumped back in, and I realized that I could play again. Also, my son became old enough to start playing, so I took him to hobby stores, and we bought. This is a funny story. I remember I'd been out of the system for a long time. I skipped. I vaguely remember D&D 3.0 when it came out, when it was D20, and I remember playing with OGL a bit and designing for it, but that was it. So I'd gone into this hobby store, and I hadn't been in there for years, and I was ringing my kid, and I was like, oh, okay, let's show me the Dungeons and Dragons, right? So the guy brings me over to the wall, and I look at it, I was like, oh, wow, this is really amazing. What edition is this? And he kind of looked at me funny. He said, 5th. And I said, 5th? There's 5? How did that happen? And he just sort of like, yeah, there's 5 editions. And that's when I realized I was way out of it. So I jumped back in. My kid and I played, and then one thing led to another. Eventually I found the indie games too.
Yeah, I'm aware that you have been designing some settings for D&D for the Forgotten Realms setting, right?
Yeah, I started developing, and for my home group, which is on Roll20. I had been developing a homebrew world. One day maybe I'll make a setting out of it. But after a while, I was saying, I'm designing games. I don't really have the bandwidth to create entire worlds right now. And Ed Greenwood was so nice to have done that for me. So I may as well just use Forgotten Realms. Plus, that means I can get on to DM's Guild and start joining the community and start contributing to the community. So yeah, I've done. What I did was I turned my homebrew game into a Forgotten Realms game, and started publishing the modules. There's only 3 up there now, but I'll be doing the whole campaign, so it'll eventually get up to level 15 in the same story arc.
That's really cool. I always thought that one of the best things that D&D ever did was the community stuff, the license with D&D 3, that kind of stuff they do. That's probably the best and smartest things they do. Really,
Yeah, and when they did it for fifth, I was stunned. I don't think anybody thought they were going to do that again. And when they did, I immediately jumped in. So I've got a design for fifth because I love it. I love indie games and I love Dungeons and Dragons. I love all games. It depends on the story I want to tell. I'll choose the system, But I was really thrilled that they opened it up, and I'm really thrilled that they created DM's Guild. And what a community that's become. I mean, the people there are talented. There's a whole global community of people that really are very supportive of one another. They come up with crazy stuff, And as a DM and as a gamer, I love seeing what like MT Black is going to do next. His adventures are just whack. They're off the wall, and they're fun, and you can drop them into places. Yeah, it's really a cool place to be hanging out. I wish I could do more there, frankly.
And how do you, now that you have come experience more the indie community, the indie side, and the Powered by the Apocalypse community, sort of community we kind of are on our own, how do you think, is it different? Is it similar? It's just crazier?
I love the indie community. I didn't realize the depth of it. I first was introduced to Powered by the Apocalypse only about a year ago, and I just completely went nuts over it. The publisher and writer of Spirit of 77, Dave Kazia.
I have it somewhere here.
Yeah, I do too. It's in my pile.
Yeah, I also have a pile.
Oh, that's Monster of the Week. It's in the same. Oh, here we go. Spirit of 77. Buy it.
Yeah, it's really good too.
It's hilarious, and all of his modules are great too. I mean, it's awesome. It's not hilarious. It's hilarious. Anyway, I'm lucky to live by Dave. So he goes to our local Los Angeles con, StrategicCon, and we actually, through StrategicCon puts on 3 cons a year, which is amazing. I mean, I know a lot of cities are relegated to 1 con a year. We get 3. So, and they're all very busy and very active. And StrategicCon is extremely independent in its flavor. I mean, there's the whole Adventure League thing, which is great, and then there's a Pathfinder Society, and there's but when you get off of the leagues, it's almost entirely independent. You find everything from Dread to Fate to Powered by the Apocalypse. In fact, Powered by the Apocalypse has been the flavor du jour for the last year. I don't even really see much Savage Worlds. It's really just all storytelling games, from what I can tell. Stuff I'd never heard of is there. But anyway, Dave was playtesting Bedlam Hall, which was his last Kickstarter. And he just funded last month on that. And Bedlam Hall is sort of Downton Abbey meets Addams Family.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. But anyway, I had no idea what was going on. I just saw the description at the con. I was like, I gotta check this out. And Dave is probably the most amazing game master I've ever experienced. He is really very physical and vocal, and he, is very theatrical. And the game was wild. It was amazing. It was so much fun, and I didn't know that role-playing games could do that. And I remember in the '90s when we were playing Rifts, jumping off of tables and stuff. But the idea that you would use narrative mechanics blew me away. So I immediately jumped in and got everything I could find. I started with Tremulous, Monster of the Week, Spirit of 77, and I just sort of Dungeon World. I finally got around to getting Apocalypse World 2.
Yeah.
I just ate it all up, and then I was playing with my kid, and having looked at all of these games, I said, basically, you know what? You can literally play whatever setting you want. What do you want to play? And he said, Disneyland. And I said, all right, well, I guess we could do that. And then he said, but with Cthulhu. And I'm like, that's a good idea.
That's a visionary idea right there.
That's how it started. And so I I used kind of a hybrid of Tremulous and Monster of the Week to play that.
Hmm.
Then I was realizing, you know what, I can really go farther with this, and then it just started. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, I was putting up a Patreon, and now I'm kickstarting. So through the process, I got to meet a lot of people in the independent game world, and I have never met a group of people that are more supportive, more creative, more exciting than these people, you know. And I get to hang out with them on Slack. I hang out with them on forums. I see them at the cons, and you know, the podcasting community. You know, it's amazing. These people are great, and they really have a lot of passion for telling stories. And let's not forget, at my core, I'm a storyteller. I'm a novelist. It's what I do. I'm a writer.
You have published a book called Will Shakespeare and the Ships of Solomon, which is,
Yeah.
as I understand, is sort of in a setting in which all the myths, like the Illuminati and that kind of stuff,
Oh yeah.
are real. So yeah, that's there too. Something interesting too.
Yeah, that might be in my next project. But yeah, right, Will Shakespeare and the Ships of Solomon was my first book out. There's other books coming. I got really side railed by games and game design, so I don't know when those books are coming. But I love to tell stories, and I think that's what's so great about this community, that we all love storytelling, and there's something about collaborative storytelling through game mechanics. So you create the most amazing things that you would never be able to do on your own. So yeah, I love it. I love the independent community.
Yeah, it's true. Especially one of the things I have found out about the indie community and that I find really fun is that when you meet all the authors of the Powered by the Apocalypse games, they knew each other. They know each other, all of them.
Yeah.
It's like a inbreeding family of creators. Like,
Yeah, that's a funny observation. It's true. And even if I don't know the other writers, I know of them, you know, and I probably know them online, you know. But a lot of these writers are very accessible. You know, like for example, Michael Sands.
oh yeah.
Buy it. Michael, he's on Google Plus. He talks to people, and let's not forget Vincent Baker, who opened up his framework for anybody to work in, and totally talks to you about it, and is really supportive. He was a patron. He backed the project. He's behind it.
Yeah, I see the tweet. Yeah.
Which when he packed the Patreon, I was like, oh no, I've got to do this right. I can't mess this up. He's gonna see. And I messaged him. I said, Vincent, man, what are you doing? You can't do this to me. Now there's all this pressure. He said, you'll be fine. It's fine. Relax. But yeah, man, he's great. He's, you know, the fact that he created this framework is amazing. Because he, I think, in the way that Wife Wolf messed everything up in the 90s, I think Vincent has messed everything up now. I think he's turned role-playing games on their head and has opened up a whole new way of imagining games. And he wasn't like, you know, he wasn't capitalist about it. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but he wasn't like, you know, proprietary about it. He said, no, go, run, have fun, see what you come up with. And he could have, you know, he could have gone a different direction, but no, instead he chose to innovate, and he chose to let people innovate as well. And that's great. I mean, you know, I wish that that we could use that model in other businesses.
Yeah, it would be really great. I mean, Apocalypse World, one of the coolest things I think is that it had a chapter just dedicated to hacking the game.
Yeah, this is how you break it.
Yeah, that was revolutionary.
Right. And you know, when I first got into it, it's deceptively it's deceptively complex. When you first get into it, you know, and I was thinking, oh, you know what, this is a really good way to, you know, get into it because it's a system that's easy to navigate. Looks like it's pretty easy to design. So, you know, if I'm going to move into the independent world, it's one thing making modules for Forgotten Realms because the rules are the rules, and you just change them to your liking, and it's easy. I mean, it's more like a toolbox, very simple. But with this one, and I'm going into the independent community. This is a community that loves the games. This is a community that really understands how they work. So this might be a good system for me to, break into, and because I didn't want to go Fate, which I'm still trying to understand Fate. I'm not sure I do.
I think everyone is. Even the author, I'm pretty sure he has problems with understanding it too.
Right. But anyway, so the other systems looked a little daunting, and this one seemed palatable, something I could probably work with, understand. And so I started working in it, and I was like, okay, here we go. I'll just reskin it. And I was on the Happy Jacks podcast, has a forum, and there's this guy on that forum who's notoriously powered by the Apocalypse guy. He's the PPTA guy. He knows everything about it. His name is Hivemind. Really good guy. He's in Japan. And so I posted it on the forums, and Hivemind looked at this and went, "This is terrible. This is really bad. You don't get powered by the Apocalypse at all." And he was very nice about it, but he deconstructed it for me, and I was like, "Oh, what? Wait, this is way more involved than I thought." And that's what because I don't think that I was going in with a D&D lens, looking at the mechanics, and it's not a system of mechanics. It's a framework. It's a way of thinking. And absolutely. That's what makes a good Powered by the Apocalypse game, is somebody that okay, this is I'm looking at it from this point of view, therefore these are the mechanics. Not I'm going to retool mechanics to fit my game, right? It's completely different. So what I thought was going to be a simple process turned into, essentially a year-long personal reflection time. And I learned so much about game design, about myself, about the framework, and I'm confident that I'm right in there. That I feel like I'm in the current. I feel like I get it. And there were some major, there were some major changes along the way as I started realizing when it plays out how it's supposed to go. But I think that it might be the most difficult system to develop for that I've ever experienced. And I've developed for Savage Worlds, I developed for Palladium, Dungeons and Dragons, and for my own homebrew stuff. But this one really opened my eyes to how not only how challenging design can be, but how rewarding it can be when you get into the rhythm. As I just think that once you're in the current, man, it's like nothing else. You're riding a wave, and then it becomes really, really fun. It's worth all the work.
There you go. Powered by the Apocalypse, I have discovered way of life, I guess.
It is. I think it is. Right. I would say more so than other game systems, because I used to think that the fans for Pathfinder were rabid and crazy about the game system, but the PPTA people really are, and I think it's because once you're in, and you're in that current, as they say, then it's like nothing else compares. It's like, oh, don't give me that. Now, don't get me wrong, I love myself some Dungeons and Dragons, and but the experience you get at a table with Powered by the Apocalypse games is unlike anything else.
So now that we are moving closer to the game itself, we could maybe talk about the Patreon experience. How did you decide to start a Patreon campaign, and how has it been for you, the experience of doing it?
It's been there were a lot of false starts. I think that I tend to be very tenacious. Mm-hmm. I'll just go marching in and do it, whether or not I'm prepared to do it or know what I'm doing is almost beside the point for me. I kind of jump in first and go, oh wait, I don't know how to swim, and then and then I'll figure it out as I go. It's just my personality. So when I jumped into this game, I thought I had it figured out. I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to make some playbooks, right? And then I'm going to make moves in a playbook that match the setting. I'm going to read a bunch of books to get ideas on how moves tend to work. And then I'll just go from there. And then once I realize that, I don't think It's possible, I think, when you're designing for Powered by the Apocalypse to be able to bridge or rebuild an existing game. I think it's possible, but it sure is a lot easier to do it from scratch and do what the setting demands. Because I ended up having to scrap a lot of work along the way, because once I got into it, I realized the setting didn't work for that. So I would build a whole line of playbooks, and I'd go to the table to play it, and I was like, oh wait, this doesn't work at all. So I'd redo all of the playbooks, and I come to the table again. It's like, no, this still doesn't work. And then I would change and tweak, and I think it was for me a lot more work than it had to be. Like had I gone in from, okay, this is what the setting demands, and then built the game from there, probably would have gone a lot smoother. But I learned along the way, and I think that for me, I have to break it in order to understand it. And I definitely broke Powered by the Apocalypse during the process, and then I saw the pieces on the floor and said, oh, that's how it works. And I was able to rebuild. And once I rebuilt, I was like, oh yeah, okay, this is fine. This is how it's supposed to be. And then that was the end of the alpha phase. And now I'm in the beta phase. So I don't think you've seen the beta one yet, but
not yet. I'm waiting for it.
Coming along.
Cool. So now I think we could start with the game itself, talking a little bit about it. It's funny because we haven't even mentioned what the game is about, although I expect most people to know a little bit already. Could you tell us what is the game about? What is the Happiest Apocalypse on Earth about?
The Happiest Apocalypse on Earth is about what it sounds like. It's what it is a theme park, a Lovecraftian theme park. And there's obviously a pretty big target here, but what it is it's sort of riding that Five Nights at Freddy's creepypasta wave, where we're like, going to take everything that was wonderful and innocent of our childhood, and we're going to pervert it and turn it evil and horrible, and then we're going to play that. And so it's sort of a if theme parks were evil, this is what they would be. And that's it. I mean, what the evil is, you get to decide. What the park is, you get to decide. What happens at the park, you get to decide. So it's really just a setting that says, okay, this is what it is. We have evil Disneyland. What do you do?
As opposed to normal Disneyland.
Well, it doesn't have to be Disneyland. It's any children's theme park. There's definitely some reference to that experience, though. That sort of Orlando, Anaheim theme parks with magic and wishing and animatronics, which let's all face it, animatronics are evil. So
absolutely.
And I've noticed since you can create your own situations in Happiest Apocalypse on Earth, most people do animatronics.
I think we feel the impending doom of robots taking over. It's just going to happen. We know it's going to start soon. So. Right.
Yeah. So the game mechanics are really interesting. A lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games have playbooks where you get to play basically a particular character that has moves that only that character can do, and they're usually archetypal. In the early iterations of the game, that was the case. There were playbooks. It's funny, I actually started off with guests in the park, and you would play guests in the park. And I still play that way with my kid. But it moved from guests to employees of the park because I realized pretty early on that there's no way this is going to be anything but a one-shot if you're playing guests.
Yeah.
You're obviously not going to come back. And it makes great for one-shots. And often at cons, I'll do that because with guest mode, I can strip away a lot of the special moves and just use with the basic moves. And then, that's great for a one-shot, just learning the system and playing it on a one-off. But if you want any character progression, or you want to play more than one session with a character, doesn't really work.
Mm-hmm.
So I made it employees of the park, and those were playbooks for a while until. But this was during the design phase. I was realizing this is when the setting informs the mechanics instead of vice versa, because when you have archetypes in a park, you kind of want to put it up with the departments, right? Mm-hmm. So you have the custodians, or you have management, you have marketing, you have the people that run the attractions, you have the maintenance people, right? Mm-hmm. And they all had playbooks with moves, and it made sense from a apocalypse world structure. It made sense. Mm-hmm. But when you sit at the table, it didn't work, because why would marketing and maintenance be together dealing with one scenario? And I used to have to create trivial reasons why that would be, and it became trite and forced. And the last thing you want to do, if you're forcing something in a PPTA game, you're not doing it right. It's supposed to flow. Mm-hmm. So I hated that I had to force it in. And so what the setting demanded was that we're not going to even have playbooks. We're going to have an application for employment. You are going to apply to work at Mouse Park, and based upon your background or your skill set or whatever, that's going to determine what your moves are. And then you'll have unique moves, but because of your background, but everybody was working in the same department. Mm-hmm. That way, it just flows better. You get to decide what department that is, but you have to pick your own moves based on your background. And once I fixed that, it was like, oh, okay, that works.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah. That was one of the things that when I first saw it, for me I was like a little bit skeptic, because it's not too common in Powered by the Apocalypse game. It's not unheard of, but I usually don't like it. But when I started reading it, I was like, this actually makes sense. And then I started to picture how would it be to play someone making an interview for my players, and like making a job interview to them and being horrible to them in that interview. And I was like, yeah, I want to do that so bad.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah, and it does deviate from the typical framework, but that's why it's a framework. I mean, Apocalypse Engine doesn't say you have to have playbooks. Mm-hmm. It says you play to find out. You play to find out what happens. And so I think that it's what the setting demands. Now, if this were another setting, there would probably be playbooks. Mm-hmm. But that's what goes back to my earlier point. That's why you start from a design point of view. It's always better, or I learned that it's better to start from the setting and build out rather than start with the mechanics and build in. Because obviously I had to scrap most of what I designed along the way. But it worked out.
Cool. From a player perspective, how is the experience for a player to play this game? How the mechanics help the player and motivate the player to enjoy it and to play into the themes of the game?
Well, the players are given a lot of power, especially in the session 0 when you're getting started. I mean, you get to come up with a section of Mouse Park and describe it. You get to come up with an attraction. Mm-hmm. So you sort of help build it. And then the narrator, which is my MC, the narrator can then use that thing that you build as the hux of the game. And so, for example, I was just playing a strategic contest last weekend, and the players at the table decided that they wanted it to be 1960 Disneyland. So they chose that particular moment in time, that particular park, and then they built an attraction. And their attraction was they wanted the Sorcerer's Apprentice from Fantasia. Mm-hmm. So, Mickey with the hat and, moving the brooms through the water, right? But the ride had to have water effects and that it was a show, right? So then as the narrator, I said, okay, I need to come up with a session that uses this attraction. And the narrator has these tools to create what are called incidents. And incidents are essentially what the session is about. You create threats, which in my game are called dangers. And then those dangers have a clock that they go by, just like a typical Powered by the Apocalypse game. And the players then have to, or want to, or should intervene and then stop the clock, and then that creates the conflict. So so at the table, once you know what the ride is, essentially you then have to turn around and say, okay, this is the incident. So I had basically Walt Disney with the big 60s style remote control trying to use Mickey and the brooms to kill the guest because he's gone crazy. And that was their choice. The players decided that the conflict was psychotic. So that was their fault. They wanted animatronics.
Yeah, blame the players.
It was their fault. They wanted animatronics. They wanted, crazy and psychosis, and they wanted water effects. So that's what happened. And so I started the clock, and Walt got crazy, and hilarity ensued. So yeah, the players have a lot of impact on how the game is structured. Once you're in the session, the narrator is now running things in terms of what the setting is doing, what the NPCs are doing. But then the player has their basic moves, which allow them to, whenever the outcome is uncertain, then they can use a move and then roll the move, and then that propels the story forward. They also have special moves based on their resume that they build during character creation.
Talking about the moves, since we don't really want to talk about all of them, and because that would take like too much time, which one is your favorite? Yeah, which? By the way, not released yet. So that's kind of an exclusive.
This is an exclusive.
Yeah, if you pause the video, you can read it exclusively. Which move of those you have written is your favorite, and tell us a little bit about it and how it works, to see a snippet of the rules.
Yeah, I think my favorite, because it's a mechanic that's very different than other games, is Wish Upon a Star.
Yeah, that one is my favorite too.
Yeah, and it's a wacky one, but what it does is it allows you to re-roll something that you rolled wrong, or negate any harm that you took. Happiest Apocalypse also has shock, so you can die, or you can go crazy, in a typical Lovecraftian way. So you could negate shock, you can negate harm with it. But what you're doing is you're calling upon the great mouse for help. When you do that, the mouse will help. You'll get to re-roll, you'll get to negate, but you accumulate a twinkle, which is your debt to the mouse. When you have accumulated 3 twinkles, a horrible doom befalls you. What that is, that depends on what you're doing at the moment, but something horrible will happen. And then all the twinkle goes away, so you paid your debt. And so it's a really fun mechanic.
Yeah.
It's sort of like luck in Monster of the Week, but it's a little more dark, and the interesting thing about the mechanic too is whenever you roll Wish Upon a Star, you start with a +0. The twinkle works like a stat. So when you get a twinkle, that means now you roll Wish Upon a Star -1. You get another twinkle, you roll up -2. It gets harder and harder to do it right. On the third, you roll -3. So you could be rolling a -3 twinkle on Wish Upon a Star. A horrible doom comes upon you, and something horrible happens on top of that because you rolled so poorly. So it's designed for, you're running away on a roller coaster, and now the roller coaster just collapses beneath your feet, that sort of horrible thing. And the flip side to that, though, is that there are special moves that you can choose that are called Mouse Park moves. And these are moves where you can use Twinkle as a bonus to your roll. So you might be over here wishing upon a star and causing mayhem and destruction because you want more Twinkle so that you can do this move here.
Ooh, that's good. That's really good.
Right? You could use it as a bonus. And one of them is fill the world with sunshine, which is, it's magic is all it is. I mean, you could throw beams of light out of your fingers. You can do all kinds of crazy things with it, but you have had to accumulate Twinkle in order for it to work well. Yeah. So it's a really fun part of the game.
Yeah, I really like that, the fact that you accumulate twinkles that are supposed to be bad but actually they also can be useful. It's the carrot and the stick constantly one way hitting each other.
Yeah, there was one this last con actually where she had purposely accumulated Twinkle for the purpose of using fill the world with sunshine, and she had rainbows shooting out of her fingers as she was blowing up animatronics. It was wild. It was like, yeah, that's so cool. That worked great. And she basically stopped the threat by doing that, which is what the Great Mouse wants. The Great Mouse wants chaos, so that worked out great for her.
Amazing. Also talking about a little bit about the mechanics. How is the how the long-term mechanics are going to work? Because that's the part that I haven't had opportunity to look at it that much. How is it going to be on the long term for the GM and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it is a game and a setting that doesn't really lend itself to a long campaign.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that it works best is if it's serialized, sort of like X-Files or Supernatural, right? Where you're playing the same character but dealing with a different situation every week.
The monster of the week thing. Yeah.
Monster of the week, right? And that works great because then you can kind of just you have your individual arcs, but then you have your overall arc, that goes for the period of however long you play. Mm-hmm. And when your character advances, then you earn experience by failing. There are actually a couple of moves where you earn experience by succeeding too, which I'm frankly on the fence about. Beta is about trying to tweak with that a bit and see, what really are the long-term effects of that. But the experience will allow you to pick more moves as you advance in your character's journey. So you can, you could play indefinitely as an employee of Mouse Park, having to deal with situation after situation until finally you have to confront the Great Mouse or whatever it is that's behind all of this evil. And the setting in general stands as the Great Mouse is there, but you get to decide what the nature of the Great Mouse is. And by picking a series of tags, one of the tags is not a mouse. Not a mouse. Great Mouse is not a mouse. Or the Great Mouse is in somebody's head. Or the Great Mouse is, whatever. And so there's part of actually one of our stretch goals is we want to create, by we, I have the artist Rob has been instrumental in helping design some of these mechanics, and he's been working with me on some ideas. And one idea he had that ended up as a stretch goal was creating a pantheon.
Oh yeah, that one,
evil. Yeah. And we want to do that. That would be great. And then there's more of a system in place for creating, what is the evil exactly.
I would love for that one to get made. That sounds so really so great. The pantheon of evil gods or something like that.
Yeah. Then we can deal with the duck. We can deal with, any number of characters. The talking dog. The dog that does not talk. We have a lot of fun with that.
Amazing. Talking a little bit more about the themes of the game. What are your main inspirations for the horror of these games? We have mentioned Lovecraft, creepypasta, that kind of stuff. What are your touchstones when it comes to horror and in this game particularly?
Yeah, I have lived here in Southern California for years. Before I had before our kid, my wife and I used to go to all of the theme parks, and we were members. And in our roaring 20s, you would drink too much and go and hang out in different parts of the park, and and it became part of a ritual for us. But then after we had a kid, we'd go, but with that lens, we have Universal Studios out here, we have Disneyland, we have Six Flags, we have all these great parks, and I'm an author, game designer. My wife is also an author. She's a horror author. Her book is coming out in October, so follow me on Twitter. I'll definitely.
I actually love horror books, like a lot, like too much. So yeah.
Her book is off the hook. Oh man, yeah, wait till it comes out. But anyway, plug the Laird Baylor. I'm tweeting about it. So anyway, cool. I digress. But we're into that. So we're horror people, and I can only look at these parks from that point of view. It's like, what's really going on here? This ride is kind of creepy. And there was a moment in one of the inspirations that's going to be in the book is this incident about what I call "What a Widow World," which is it's a small world, right? And there was a moment we were stuck on the ride. It's a small world, and we were stuck there for so long. Can you imagine that music over? And we were there for a while, and it was just like over and over and over again. And then you're just kind of going mental about it, and all of a sudden, the music stopped, and then these animatronic kids are like going
Shit.
with no music. And I'm like, this is creepy. They have to fix this. And, finally the music started up and we started going again. And I was like, I was traumatized by that. And that, actually played that moment out at a table once. And there was a woman at the table was like, this is creepy. You need to stop. Like, I know, right? Creepy.
Not just me. It's actually, yeah.
But yeah, I think that's probably the biggest touch point. Is I think fundamentally we all think theme parks are a little creepy, and just this, and I just ran with it. What are all of the horrible things that could happen, with that lens?
Yeah, that looking behind the surface and to see what's there. These are really not a definition, but like someone said that uncanny horror is the idea that things are not what they seem, and neither are you. So it's kind of that thing that's really cool. Discovering what's there.
Yeah, and my kid's really into Five Nights at Freddy's, and all of his friends are into it, and it's everywhere. And that was definitely an inspiration. In fact, there was one session that we played that was specifically Five Nights at Freddy's, and I had designed. Actually, I downloaded a map of the pizzeria, and we were using Happiest Apocalypse mechanics. And my kid was, the security guard, right? And then the whole game was about jump scares, and he was taking shock, and it was a lot of fun, But that was definitely a core inspiration.
Nice. Another thing is because this game is not only horror. There's also humor and satire, that kind of stuff. What do you think? Because this is not something so uncommon. We have seen it since the Evil Dead trilogy from Sam Raimi to more recently, I don't know, Get Out by Jordan Peele. Humor and horror is one of those things that should not work together, but they do for some reason. What do you think is that?
Yeah, I was sort of schizophrenic early on because it works as satire and humor. It also works as horror, and I think it came down to the point where it uses satire as a weapon. What you do is you embrace the horror, as absurd as it might be, and the more absurd, the more you embrace it. I really think it's like Evil Dead, where it's just like this is insane. I have, a costume Goofy that is eating children because he's been actually a monster underneath and is just swallowing children whole, and you just have to laugh. This is absurd and horrifying, and the more absurd and horrifying, the better. And I think you just embrace the satire and take it extremely seriously, and the more seriously you take it, the more hilarious it becomes.
Yeah, absolutely. When I've played horror games, one of the way to tell people that people are really getting into the horror is because they start having these uncomfortable, nervous laughs, because they don't know what is going on, so they can only laugh. So there's definitely some relationship there.
Yeah, and and when you get into it, it sort of it creates its own momentum. I mean, and it becomes my job as a narrator to one up myself on the horror, because I have these moves that I make as a narrator. Things like, reveal the true terror of something, right? And so there's back in It's a Small World, which I go back there a lot because it's a really scary ride. There's an animatronic kid just like eating dismembered arm like chicken, just. And then looks up and there's somebody here, drops the arm and runs, and you're like, what is that? What happened? This is crazy. And what do? Do you chase it? Are you going to chase it or are you going to run? And then the moves start playing because then, oh no, I'm going to run because that was creepy. Oh wait, the gates are closed. You're locked in. Now what do you do? And it just sort of runs along that momentum, and the more horrifying, the better.
Amazing. So coming back to the Kickstarter campaign, that, as I said before, it has only been going on since the beginning of June, so a couple of days.
Yeah, I started on Memorial Day in the United States, so that was 27th,
okay,
I think, or this 26th. So it's only been up for a week.
Yeah, and it's already funded, and it's well overfunded, and it's already achieved one stretch goal, I think, extra art, and it's going pretty well. So that's pretty cool. What sort of things can we expect to get from this Kickstarter, like the extra juicy stuff?
Yeah, so we hit our first stretch goal within a day, which was great because I really wanted that. This artist Rob, he's an illustrator, Rob Hebert. He's local. He's in Long Beach. I actually ran into him at Strategicon. That's how I met. And you can see on the Kickstarter some of his artwork. He just does this really great, creepypasta style art. But we had just enough for the book. But that first stretch goal, now we can fill the book with illustrations, which is very cool, and that's going to pay for Rob. The next stretch goal, which we're heading to now, is going to pay for Ian Lannis. Ian is another artist that I've worked with in the past. He does my Forgotten Realms stuff. Mm-hmm. Actually, that's not fair. He had beautiful, beautiful pieces of art laying around that were not licensed to anybody, and he allowed me to buy a non-exclusive license for this beautiful art, and that's what I put on my DM's Guild stuff. So the art that you see on my DM's Guild products are, he's letting me use it. And when you look at it, I mean, he is an incredible artist. And so is Rob. But the idea with stretch goaling Ian is to make the cover substantially more full, not an illustration, but a full-on piece of art. And that's what I wanted Ian for. So that stretch goal we're closing in on. I think we only need about 1,500 more on that, and that's $7,500 mark. So once we get past that, now we're reaching the 10,000 mark, which, we've got 20 how many days? 20 days left. Mm-hmm. So I think we could do it. Maybe if we really rally, we can do this. That would mean I can build out the mechanics for playing a guest.
Yeah.
And then there are, building a guest and playing the guest, and which is different than playing an employee. So there's that. Past that is the I better double check, but we have the Spanish edition.
So, yeah.
It's at 15.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And so at 15, I really want to do a Spanish translation of the game.
So and there's a little bit into that one. But why did you decide to put that stretch goal there?
I wanted to do that from the beginning because early on I noticed that a lot of Spanish-speaking people really liked the idea of the game. And I'm not surprised because, when you think about the parks being in Florida and Southern California, that makes sense. I grew up in Colorado and spent my adult life in Southern California. So Spanish translation sort of comes with the territory whenever you're producing any kind of creative product. And because I have a lot of Angelino friends, I like, oh yeah, of course I want to do a Spanish version. The cost is prohibitive on a Kickstarter. So, but by building it to a stretch goal, I could probably make it happen. And it's 15, which is, I don't think that ambitious. I think that we can pull it off. We rally enough people. I think this early burst was definitely powered by the Apocalypse people that were into this game, love this thing. The Kickstarter fanatics. Every time I look at who pledged, I can see they backed 500 other projects, right? And so they're in it. They're looking for something like this, and then that's great. I think though, as we're plateauing, it can break out of the indie world a bit and start getting people who don't really know Powered by the Apocalypse, or maybe even role-playing games. Mm-hmm. Or that are relegated to games that that they have translations for, and I think that could be the next run. You know, it's got people that aren't in the community that would play it, especially if there was a Spanish version. So that's my hope. I think we can rally.
Yeah, that would be
Raise your banners high is a move in the raise our banners high.
absolutely. I think it will be great to be able to achieve that for the Spanish community. I've been living in UK for a while. I'm fine with English editions, but I know a lot of people that would love to have a Spanish translation of this game and many others. And it's true. I think there's a good chance to break out of the indie community, because with other games like more typical games, many people already have an established system and they think, I don't really know if I want to do this with Powered by the Apocalypse. But with like Disney World, Cthulhu, I think they will be fine trying anything. They expect something different just because of that.
Yeah. 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 And I'm finding a lot of Disney files are really into it. People that are big Disney fans. I see them at cons, especially, where they're just like, "This is perfect. I love this because I think this every time I go to Disneyland." You know, and I'm picking on Disney a lot, but it's not just them. I mean, Universal is equally creepy, and Six Flags, when you start getting down the amusement park track, I think it gets even creepier. It's just, I like to pick on the Great Mouse.
Yeah. I also went to the Disney World once when I was small. I have very confusing but terrifying memories from there. That I don't really visit them often for particular reasons.
Yeah. Well, and the Imagineers are very good at making things creepy. I mean, it's part of the experience, But I think the more innocent it is, the creepier it gets.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we had lost, I think we have recovered, but we had lost at some point, was that child stories are supposed to be happy and nice, but also they used to have like a dark side to it, and we lost for a while. I think it's coming back to some degree, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I also think that, I grew up watching these movies, and there's always been this sort of black and white morality, the hero saving somebody and putting down the evil, and and as we grow up, you realize that things are more gray than that. And I think the not to sound altruistic, but part of what this game does is deconstructs that sort of fake morality that in childhood you grow up in, and when we're in the age of the internet and there are no geographical boundaries. I'm talking to you, you're in London, I'm in Los Angeles. I'm playing a game with people from all over the world online through Roll20. So all these boundaries are gone, and we get to see the world for what it is. I think that's what one of the currents in the Happiest Apocalypse is like. It's not all. It's not all fun, We have, we know the truth, don't we? And you're now a member of the park, so you know the truth, so you get to decide whether, as a player, you're going to perpetuate it, and find the guest to offer as a sacrifice, or stop something from happening, or shield the others from seeing what happens, and so now the truth is in your hands. You get to decide how to play the morality, and that's really cool. By turning it all on its head, it allows you to play with morality yourself.
Yeah, I think deconstruction of a theme of genre is something that it has to happen eventually for everything. It's happening now with superheroes,
Right.
with horror. There's from Evil Dead to there's this movie about the kids that go to the middle of the forest in a there's all these examples of the construction of genre, and it's something that I think is part of the maturity of the genre. It's not saying that you don't like it anymore, but that you're seeing it with different eyes, and that's really interesting.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, and the superhero movies have gotten really gritty. The grittier, the better. And when you think about what's streaming now, what's hot on Netflix, when you look at what's, something's beeping over there. When you look at what's hot on Netflix with like Game of Thrones and Stranger Things and some of these things, it's very, very, very dark, and we're kind of rejecting it. Even Power Rangers has become dark and gritty, you know, and morally conflicted, you know. And Superman, is he a good guy, a bad guy? We don't know, do we? You know, and he used to be the symbol of good, so it's really interesting. And I think Happiest Apocalypse definitely riding that wave, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we needed to have in Powered by the Apocalypse game. It's one of those things. I think the Powered by the Apocalypse is a really flexible framework or philosophy or whatever you want to call it. But this kind of thing, it is what it does best for me.
Yeah, I think so. It's a really good framework for that, because when you see it in things like Monster Hearts, which the second edition just came out. I haven't read it yet, but it tackles that stuff head on, and Avery needs to be commended because she really, I mean, the sort of high school angst, gay lesbian community, you know, hiding who you are, and she's so powerful. This silly little game is so powerful, and makes so much social change. She was in The Guardian. The Guardian published an article about Avery and Monster Hearts. I'm thinking Powered by the Apocalypse is in The Guardian because of the impact and change Avery is making with a game, and it just blows my mind. I think that you can't underestimate the power of the mechanics and how games can help people. My game doesn't do that. My game isn't trying to make change, but you're right. I mean, the framework allows you to go so far that you can make change and impact change. And I'm just so glad, you know, when you see games like Monster Hearts and what it's doing for people, it just amazes me.
Yeah, Monster Hearts was actually the first Powered by the Apocalypse game that I ever read fully and played. In fact, it's the first game that I played on this channel, and it absolutely, I don't even remember how did I found it, because before that I was playing Vampire the Masquerade, but it changed my life. Like, I went from playing Vampire the Masquerade with my friends to having a channel, playing all these Powered by the Apocalypse games and interviewing amazing authors like you. It was such an inspiration. It still is.
I think it was the second one, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. I think Vincent mentioned it. It was the second game to come out after Apocalypse World.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. The Guardian. I was like, man, I couldn't believe that. Powered by Apocalypse was mainstream.
Kind of. Okay, so we have talked a lot actually about the Kickstarter. What can we expect for after the Kickstarter? What plans do you have in terms of? I don't want to ask like for a specific timetable, because you really never know. I think that's my experience for backing all these games. You really never know. It's going to take longer than you think, and that's part of it. What plans do you have? How do you expect it to work?
Well, my goal is to have everything by December. In fact, I have a personal goal of November, because things get really crazy for me in December. So I am in the process of writing beta now, which should be done by the time it funds. So when funding is complete, everybody that is backed it will immediately get the beta rules. So you could just start running and playing it right away. And that's my sneaky way of getting feedback so that I can make the final version better, right?
Everyone does it. Everyone. So don't worry about it.
And also, John Adamus, who did Noir World, we have funded the ability to have him edit it, which I'm very excited about. And he is a career editor. He goes way back, and he understands Powered by the Apocalypse. He painstakingly created Noir World, which is an amazing game. I can't wait to get it.
Yeah, me too.
So he's going to edit it, and so that's going to happen in July. So that gives me time in July to get the artwork together. I'm a publisher as well, so I do a lot of this stuff in-house. I can, so I'll once the beta has been done and is the final, I'll lay it out. So we're looking, I think that timetable can work. I'm thinking November is not too crazy. A lot of the mechanics are in place, so now it's just writing and editing and making sure the mechanics work. So a lot of more play testing I'd like to do a lot more of that. There's some things I need to tweak, but we'll get there.
That it will be probably the first ever Powered by the Apocalypse game that does that. That actually delivers when it said it will. It will. I think I am still waiting for my copy of Blades in the Dark. So.
Oh well, you're in the UK. All of us Americans got it already.
I know. I also got the special edition, so I get you. I have to. I know I have to wait a little bit more.
Anyway. And everybody's already played it and moved on to the next thing.
Yeah, I know. Also talking about delivery. If hopefully if we reach the Spanish translation goal, how would that work out, publication wise?
Yeah, so that's going to take a little longer because the version that needs to be translated isn't going to be ready until December. Mm-hmm. So that will then translating services usually can take 60 days. The layout isn't going to change much. Mm-hmm. So, and that's part of the reason I wanted to do it as a Kickstarter, because I didn't want to do a whole nother project just for the Spanish edition when I'm just going to be using the same assets. Mm-hmm. So, presumably that would be a March goal if everything runs smoothly. And translating services can happen quicker, but it would need to go to a Spanish editor. And so I've done translations in the past that weren't edited, and I really regretted it.
Yeah.
This isn't Spanish. Spanish. I don't know what this is.
No, it has like 1,000 years of history. It's fine.
Yeah. So yeah, that'll be the case then. And in terms of in terms of the process, it's pretty turnkey for me. I'm doing something a little different in distribution. Mm-hmm. I have channels through Ingram, so I'm going to have two editions. There's going to be the edition that goes through DriveThruRPG. Mm-hmm. in the typical way, and then there's going to be a system that goes through Ingram, which will hit Amazon and all of the bookstores and stuff.
Oh, nice.
So that way I have more control over distribution. So I can deliver ebooks and PDF books through an email, as opposed to having to do a coupon, a drive-through, and all of that. And so the delivery will be quicker, and I can distribute directly from Ingram. So you'll be getting your book from the warehouse. So it doesn't go to me. I don't reship it. I'll be shipping it directly from the printer. So you can get it on drive-through. It's fine, but fulfillment from the Kickstarter is coming through me using Ingram. So hopefully, like for example, in the Blades in the Dark, you would get it in the typical, through a printing house as opposed to all of these other channels. So you would presumably in the UK get it quicker.
That would be nice for once.
Yeah. I don't know about Brazil. I mean, I've heard it could take months in Brazil, but at least Europe should be pretty quick, and Australia.
Cool. So unless we have I think one question that they're asking us is do you have any other game coming up after this one? Any idea?
I'm only supposed to be focused on Happiest Apocalypse, but since you asked, I do. You had mentioned my book, Will Shakespeare, The Ships of Solomon. It's a book about, it's basically Indiana Jones meets Da Vinci Code. So it takes place in 1947. There's a guy who's a Knights Templar and on a quest for the Holy Grail, car chases and gunfights and that kind of thing. And there's another book that's kind of associated with that, but takes place in the modern day with the same kinds of secret societies. So I want to do a game on that, and I've worked through. I think it needs to be a Savage Worlds game because it's car chases and gunfights, right? So I think that's probably going to be the next project. And should I get the licensing? I'm also working on with 2C Gaming, which is a local group that does a lot of work out of LA, and they do a lot of D&D games, and they do really great D&D work. I'm doing a game with them called Let's Kill Strahd. It's actually a one-shot where you raid Castle Ravenloft and kill Strahd. That's the whole point of it. So, and I've run it at cons a lot, and it's great. It's a crowd pleaser. That's in production now. So I've got D&D checked. I've got Savage Worlds checked, and Dave Kazia from Spirit of 77 and I are brainstorming an idea that'll be Powered by the Apocalypse-ish.
Ooh.
It might not be. We're breaking out of the mold even more than normal. So, and Dave Kazia breaks out of the mold big time with all of his games. So I think between the two of us, but we're not far enough along to really announce anything. If it goes well, that's something that we would be announcing this year before the new year.
Cool. So for anyone that is interested, I recommend you that you check out Christopher's Patreon campaign that is going to keep going after the publishing of this game with whatever he does after that. I think I've forgotten to leave the link on the description. I've only put the link to the Kickstarter, but I'll definitely put the link to the Patreon campaign too there. So I encourage you to check that out too. I think other than that, I think I would just want to thank you again for coming to talk with us on the channel, and to tell you how excited I am to finally get to read and play the Happiest Apocalypse on Earth.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, and I need to get a Roll20 session going so you can play.
I don't say that live because I will get there on that. I will get in on that definitely.
Yeah, I'd like that. That'd be great.
Cool. So, well, thank you for everyone to checking us out, and I hope you like it too. And again, the Kickstarter is still going on. There's still 20 or something like that days to go, and there's a lot of stretch goals we can get. So go fund that shit.
Yeah, go do it.
And until then, well, thank you all. We can say goodbye until the next time.
Great, very good. Look me up on Twitter, Gray Author with an E. I'm there a lot. I'm on Google Plus a lot, and also have fun with the Twitter account Visit Mouse Park.
Yeah, I've been following that one too. I let links to all of that in the description too. So
great.
Until the next time, thank you for being here, and as I always say, live long and prosper, and may the force be with you.